space, a brand new chart for the head and for the heart. It's your journey, your tools.
Okay, let me ask you this. Who's your toughest critic?
Hmm.
Like, really the most relentless one. I bet for most of us it's not some difficult relative or even your boss.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's usually that voice inside our own heads, right? The inner critic. It's the one that just zooms in on every little flaw, plays our mistakes on a loop, and keeps whispering or shouting that we're just not good enough, not capable enough.
And what's really crucial for you to get here is how sneaky it is. This internal voice often dresses itself up as, like, motivation.
Right, the tough love approach.
Exactly. We think cracking that internal whip is necessary. You know, we've sort of absorbed this idea that harsh self-judgment is what drives achievement, that fear is the best fuel.
But it's not.
Well, the evidence points elsewhere. Instead of actually leading to high performance, this constant internal negativity, it really just leads to burnout, chronic stress, anxiety, and these really deep feelings of being inadequate.
Okay, so if we accept that the critic is, well, fundamentally a flawed motivator, then we need something else. People try all sorts of things, don't they? Fighting it, ignoring it, arguing back.
Yeah, and those approaches, they rarely work, do they? It's like trying to wrestle with smoke.
Right. So our mission in this deep dive is to look at a different way, a really powerful, transformative approach that counters the critic, but not by, engaging in this losing internal battle.
Instead, it's about cultivating its direct opposite, self-compassion.
Self-compassion, okay.
And we're pulling this directly from leading research. We're looking at the 3 core components of this model. Think of it as a kind of practical, actionable shortcut to building real emotional resilience, stable self-worth.
So it's not just about feeling a bit nicer to yourself.
No, it's deeper than that. It's about actually retraining your brain's threat system, the system that inner critic keeps setting off.
Okay, let's dig into that. Let's unpack the mechanism here. If fighting the critic backfires, if arguing just gives it more power, what is this alternative? How do we actually switch on this self-compassion thing when that critical voice starts yelling at us to punish ourselves?
Well, to really grasp the solution, first, we have to acknowledge the toll it takes. That inadequacy trap.
The inadequacy trap.
Yeah. When the critic's running the show, we're basically living in a state where every flaw feels magnified. We feel fundamentally lacking somehow, and trying to fight that voice. It keeps us locked in that same negative emotional space. It's still based on self-attack, just a different flavor.
Ah, okay. So the goal isn't really silencing the critic, which, let's be honest, feels impossible sometimes.
Often is, yeah.
But it's about changing the whole internal environment.
Exactly. And this is where the really interesting work of researcher Dr. Kristen Neff comes in. She didn't just talk about self-compassion vaguely. She broke it down into 3 core practical components that work together.
3 components, okay.
And the core idea, it's actually quite simple, conceptually. Self-compassion means consciously turning the kindness, the care, the understanding we'd naturally give a friend who's struggling, turning that back towards ourselves.
That analogy of the struggling friend, that really hits home, doesn't it?
It does, because it forces us to see our own, internal hypocrisy. We'd never look at a good friend who just bombed a job interview and say, wow, you're fundamentally useless, you deserve to feel awful.
Never.
Yet we can say that, or worse, to ourselves in a heartbeat. So the first step is just noticing that huge difference.
Okay, let's dive into the first pillar then. This sounds like maybe the most intuitive one. Self-kindness versus self-judgment. It sounds like unlearning a lifetime of automatically attacking ourselves. What does self-kindness actually look like, say, after a really big public mistake?
Right. Self-kindness is about making a conscious choice. When you're suffering or feeling inadequate or you've just failed, that's the moment to choose to be gentle, warm, and understanding with yourself.
Instead of the usual.
Instead of the usual, yeah.
Yeah.
The inner critic defaults to harsh judgment, right? That punishing voice. Why do you always do this? Self-kindness comes in and replaces that attack. It actively soothes and comforts. It's like putting on a soothing balm instead of rubbing salt in the wound.
But, okay, here's a question I think a lot of people grapple with. If I'm just kind to myself after I mess up, won't that just make me complacent?
Yeah.
Like if my friend kept making the same mistake over and over, eventually I might need to challenge them a bit, not just offer comfort.
Ah.
How do we avoid self-kindness turning into just making excuses or, wallowing in self-pity?
That's a really important distinction. And it's exactly where self-compassion is totally different from self-pity or even narcissism. Self-kindness is not about ignoring your flaws or dodging responsibility.
Hmm.
You can absolutely still be motivated to change and grow. But, and this is key, that motivation comes from a place of care, not from that toxic core belief that says you are fundamentally unacceptable as you are.
Ah, I see.
Think about the difference between, like, a harsh dictator and a really good coach.
Okay.
A dictator motivates with fear, punishment. A good coach might say, okay, that didn't work. I see you're hurting. Let's look at what went wrong, figure out how to improve next time, because I believe you can. Self-kindness is like being that good coach to yourself.
That completely reframes where motivation comes from.
Yeah,
Moving away from fear-based achievement, which is always kind of brittle,
exactly.
towards care-based growth, which feels much more sustainable.
Yeah.
Okay, let's make it concrete. Say you botch a major presentation at work. The critic immediately jumps in. You're an idiot. You didn't prepare enough.
Right. And that's where the self-kindness shift happens. Instead of just absorbing that attack, you pause. You acknowledge the pain.
Yeah.
Ouch. Okay, that felt rough. I'm feeling pretty stressed and maybe embarrassed right now.
Just acknowledging it.
Yeah. And the practical step is to literally ask yourself, what would I say to a dear friend who just went through this exact thing? And then you try to direct those words inward. Maybe something like, hey, it's okay. Everyone messes up sometimes. We'll learn from this. Just breathe.
Hmm.
That small act actually helps soothe the brain's fight or flight response. It starts to rewire that old habit of self-attack into one of self-support.
Okay, that makes sense. Let's move to the second component then. This one tackles something the critic is really good at, making us feel completely alone in our struggles.
Mm-hmm. Common humanity versus isolation.
Right. The critic loves that narrative. Nobody else screws up like I do, or everyone else seems to have it all figured out, so my struggles mean I'm uniquely defective. That feeling of being isolated in your suffering, it's incredibly painful, and as you say, it's an illusion.
And common humanity is the component specifically designed to break down that illusion. It's the deep understanding, the recognition that suffering, feeling inadequate, making mistakes, failing, these aren't personal defects. They are universal parts of just being human.
Universal.
Yeah. Once you let go of the idea that your pain or your imperfection makes you somehow uniquely flawed, you realize you're just participating in the human condition. Everyone struggles. Nobody is perfect, period.
You know, the counterintuitive thing here is how powerful that realization can be.
Mm.
When the critic's loud, failure feels so intensely personal, like it's aimed right at you,
Mm-hmm.
but reframing it through common humanity. Suddenly, that failure isn't proof you're abnormal. It's actually the very thing that connects you to everyone else.
Exactly. Shame absolutely thrives in secrecy and isolation. When you feel shame, what do? You pull away, you hide, which just reinforces that feeling that your flaw is unique and terrible.
Yeah.
Common humanity is the direct antidote. It reframes the pain. It shifts from, oh, poor me, why am I like this, to, okay, this is what it feels like to be a human being struggling right now. That connection fosters a sense of belonging, even right in the middle of stress or failure.
I can really see how that would break the shame cycle. Like if you miss an important deadline and the critic starts screaming, you're so lazy and irresponsible, that just makes you want to hide.
Right, isolation.
But if you can gently remind yourself, hang on, almost everyone on earth has missed a deadline at some point. This happens. That shifts it, doesn't it? From deep personal shame to just a problem that needs to be dealt with.
It simplifies things immediately. And the practical application here is, well, it's almost like a little mental reminder or mantra. When you feel that isolation creeping in because of a mistake, or when that specific shame feeling flares up, just gently tell yourself, other people feel this way too. Or maybe struggling is part of life for everyone.
Just that small acknowledgement.
Yeah, that small internal nod immediately dials down the alienation. It reminds you that your imperfection, kind of paradoxically, is what makes you belong to the human race.
Okay, that leads us to the third component.
Yeah.
And this one feels maybe a bit more cognitively demanding. Mindfulness versus over-identification. You mentioned the critic thrives when we get tangled up in its stories, when we become over-identified with negative thoughts and feelings, like when a tiny mistake spirals into hours of obsessive rumination.
Yes, that entanglement trap. Mindfulness, specifically in this context, means cultivating a particular state of mind, one that's non-judgmental and receptive. You observe your thoughts and feelings as they are, without trying to push them away, but also without getting totally swept up by them.
So not ignoring, not amplifying.
Exactly. The goal is clarity. The critic wants you completely fused with the thought. It wants you to believe that the thought, I am a failure, is the absolute truth about you. Mindfulness creates that crucial bit of mental space, allowing you to see that thought as just a thought, a mental event passing through.
Connecting this back to the bigger picture then, self-compassion seems to need this balance. You have to acknowledge the pain, right? You can't be kind to yourself if you pretend you're not hurting.
Correct. No suppression.
But you also can't get completely lost and drowned in the drama of it all.
Right. No over-identification.
So mindfulness is the tool that lets us hold that pain in a kind of balanced awareness. We can say, okay, yes, this feels difficult right now, without adding this whole extra layer of catastrophic storytelling on top.
It's about getting what we call the distance effect. Let's say you get a sharp email from someone at work and you feel that wave of inadequacy wash over you.
Yep, know that feeling.
The critic immediately wants to pull you into a feature-length film about your total incompetence. Mindfulness allows you to step back just enough to see those critical thoughts as, like, clouds passing in the sky. They're mental events. They're temporary. They are not objective, permanent facts about who you are. The thought isn't you.
Okay, so practically speaking, let's say I am stuck ruminating, maybe about a minor argument I had yesterday. I'm totally tangled up in the he said, she said, why I was wrong.
Right.
What's the simplest mindfulness technique to just break that loop and get some of that distance?
It's remarkably simple, actually, and it's rooted in just observing without judgment. When that difficult emotion or self-critical thought pops up, try to simply notice it. Don't immediately try to fix it or argue with it. Just notice. And maybe gently label it internally. Use neutral language, like, okay, this is a feeling of shame arising, or, experiencing a thought about inadequacy right now. That simple act of observing and labeling creates instant psychological distance.
Because you're not the shame, you're the one noticing it.
Precisely. You shift from being in the storm to observing the storm. This stops you from getting completely sucked into the critic's destructive narrative and actually frees up mental energy to maybe address the actual situation if needed. So if we pull all these threads together, synthesizing everything we've talked about, the really powerful takeaway is that self-compassion. It's not some passive state of just feeling sorry for yourself or letting yourself off the hook.
It's active.
It's an active 3-part practice. It builds genuine emotional resilience and psychological stability. When you integrate self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness, you're systematically disarming that inner critic. You're soothing the threat system, you're increasing your sense of connection, and you're cultivating a more balanced awareness.
And the result sounds pretty transformative. You basically shift your inner world from being this constant battlefield where, fear and punishment are the main tools, to becoming a place of more internal safety and acceptance. You learn to motivate yourself with encouragement, not just criticism. And you can face those inevitable failures with actual resilience instead of getting paralyzed by shame.
It sounds like it fundamentally changes how you experience challenges, growth, even success.
It really can. And this maybe raises an interesting question for you, the listener, to kind of mull over or maybe even experiment with this week. If that inner critic is so rooted in this deep belief, a belief we've seen is often flawed, that harsh judgment is necessary for achievement.
Yeah.
What if you picked one specific goal this week, maybe something a bit challenging? And what if you decided to pursue it only using encouragement, understanding, and kindness towards yourself? See if you can achieve something meaningful by leaning into care and self-support instead of that internal whip. It's a powerful way to potentially prove that old critic wrong. Using only kindness as the fuel. That's a really interesting challenge.
Something to explore, definitely.
Yeah.
It's the strength to build anew. It's the light to guide you through. It's the choice to find your way. Starting here, starting today.
And that's our toolkit for today. Thanks for tuning in. Join us next week for a brand new episode, How to Build Your Portfolio of Worth. You won't want to miss it. Hit that subscribe button now and check out yourjourneyyourtools.com and the app for all the extras. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you on your journey next week.